Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. Open mic 247. Not sure what it'll say on your all's end, but I had to do some renumbering with that. Anyway, yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. Been some things going on. Hope everybody's okay. Um, I personally, I apologize, even though events happened that wasn't really my fault. But nonetheless, I don't like scheduling things and then having to unschedule it or postpone it or whatever. But it is what it is. Real life doesn't always play by our, YouTube rules or YouTube schedule, I should really say. So anyway, when you know this, this is not a really long document, but when it hit, I had already scheduled to reread Judge Angie's um, order and decision back when she did it in October of 23. So um, it kind of threw a monkey wrench into what I'd already planned. So I had to redo and to add this one in when the state responded. This is, I'm no legal scholar or anything, but there was nothing that really indicated that the state needed to respond in any way, but they did anyway. And looky there, there's Sunshine Christina. How are you?
I am well. How are you? How are you feeling, Jax?
Oh, I'm much better. I'm 95% anyway.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear. And we're going to
Yeah.
be discussing.
The state responded. The KZ filed the motion with the Supreme Court, her petition for review with the Supreme Court of for the Court of Appeals decision. And so Josh Kaul, the AG for Wisconsin, decided to file a response to that. Not very long. I
Interesting.
haven't read I haven't read it. I read the maybe the first 2 pages, but I decided to just be surprised along with everyone else. So
Well, good. I'm curious to see what he has to say. I have a postcard I'm getting in the mail for him tomorrow.
oh,
Yep.
you tell.
Yep. Well, I mail. Becca does these. I stand with Brendan
You got
Dassey.
muted. You're muted, Christina.
Is it? It doesn't show muted on my end.
Well, now you're not.
Okay. All right. I must have hovered on it. But Becca does I stand with Brendan Dassey postcards. She's been doing them
Oh
for
yeah.
a few years now.
Oh yeah.
And I've been mailing them to Kaul, and it was Evers for a long time, but now it's Walker. I do believe. Didn't we discuss this on our last podcast? I'm pretty sure Scott Walker is the new governor. And
No. Oh, is he?
yeah, let me double check. Governor of Wisconsin. I'm pretty sure
I
it
mean,
was
Evers
Scott.
isn't. Is Evers? Okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, this last, he must. Oh, no, it says Evers. So maybe, I don't know. Former Wisconsin governor. It was, I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend to understand because it's saying that Scott Walker was the governor from 2011 to 2019.
That's right.
Okay. So maybe when I looked it up, I got an old website when I Googled it, because you know how you can't trust Google all the time to get it right on the first try. So it's Evers. So ignore everything I said up until now. Anyway, I mailed these postcards out to the Attorney General's office and the governor's office. I try and do it once a week, but just to remind them and the people on, that's dealing with their mail that we haven't gone anywhere. And there are people out here who are still advocating for the truth to be told in this case. So, and I think it's a great idea. We did some for Stephen back when I did the bumper stickers a couple years ago. And I'd like to get back into a position where Becca and I can coordinate with whomever on Stephen's side to do those again, because I think it's great, because anyone in the mail that's in the mail system that puts their hands on that postcard, potentially, you know, they may read it and it may spark an interest, or, I mean, it's not going to hurt. That's all I can say. So,
True enough.
Yep.
That's right. It's not going to hurt.
No.
You know, I don't, you know, I'm sure that there's been a lot of pressure on Evers with, you know, not only Brendan's case, but other cases as well. So, but certainly Brendan's case deserves a really close look by someone with the political clout and authority to take action, because he's not going to get justice short of, you know, something we haven't seen that gets submitted to the court that is unbreakable, that it cannot be ignored.
So, not to discuss politics, there was a interesting video that showed up on my TikTok feed the other day, where the current president has made a position for a woman who he pardoned. And it's basically, if this is at an actual position and the publicity behind it is factual, this is a woman who is going to help him find cases of injustice and issue pardons. Now, I know Obama said that he can't do anything in this case. But at the same time, we all know the president has more influence and power than they say, and they can make things happen. All right. I mean, he just arrested the governor of Maine, supposedly, for not following his executive orders. And if there is someone who is actually tasked with looking for clear cases of injustice, it would be interesting to see what would happen if someone was to present Brendan's case to her. Because, you know, to anyone who's been wrongfully convicted, Brendan's case is a clear wrongful conviction.
Oh, poster child.
No, yeah. And if for a woman, if she has a heart for righting wrongs, if she got Brendan's case, I think she would be hard pressed not to fight for his freedom.
Yeah, the dividing line between a state's case and a federal case is, what would stop a president from acting directly, because that's just been the law of the land for, well, I don't know how long time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, president has great influence with
everyone.
I guess, I wouldn't say necessarily everyone, but within, reason of a state to pull some strings, apply some pressure, or have others apply pressure to certain people. Mm-hmm. So, it gets filtered a different way. Personally, I don't care in his case, and I probably should, but whatever it takes to get him out.
Yep.
And I don't want to be hypocritical about that, because Well, then you say, well, Jack, what about this case? What about this person? And I may feel that they're, completely guilty from everything that I've seen. I'm just saying, I just don't know any other way right now that Brendan is going to be able to get free.
No, me either. And that's the thing. That is, at this point, I want Brendan to get out and have the ability to have a family and have children if he chooses.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The fact that they have taken away his right to those two things, to have a life, to create a relationship with a woman and have children before he was ever able to form one. I mean, what's been done to Stephen is egregious, but we're not discussing Stephen. But at least Stephen had the ability to father children, right? Yeah. And I feel like stealing Brendan's right for that, especially when you think about what was said in the email exchange about how they needed to cut his seed off, Yeah. I mean, who are you to say that your seed is more worthy of procreation than Brendan Dassey's seed?
Come on, Christine. It's Kelly. He's, master of the universe, according to him.
Well, I know, but it's just, it is such a
disgusting. It's so arrogant.
It is such an evil statement to make about a human being. It truly is. It's like you're putting yourself in a position to determine who has a right to breathe and who doesn't. Literally. Like, I mean, that's, the more that the underlying implications of the mind that makes those statements, and the fact that no one called him out for making it. Like, they didn't say, whoa, dude, you shouldn't say that. Like, that's right. Inappropriate. Or,
right.
We're supposed to maintain professionalism, or,
that's right.
Like none of that. It's like they all have this attitude of they don't deserve to walk the same. They don't deserve to be here. And
it's like this old guy that I used to work with years ago. His words were, silence is consent. It's something that we used in the workplace. So if you saw something that needed to be fixed or whatever, but you didn't say anything, you've consented to that, whatever the hell is going on, that needed to be corrected. Silence is consent, which is exactly what they did.
Yep. That's exactly right. And which makes me think of delayed obedience is still disobedience, right? It's the same kind of thing. You don't have to participate to still not do the right thing.
That's right.
Your choice to pretend it's not happening is still acknowledging it and just choosing not to do anything about it. You're still making a choice.
Yeah.
And we've kind of been led to believe that inaction is not like an open choice, but it truly is. Choosing not to do something is still choosing.
That's right. That's a choice in itself.
That's right.
You chose not to act. Yep. For Brendan, without, I'm sure now Ryder and Drizzen, they know more than we know. They've got more information than we have. I don't know what they have that that we may not. I've really pushed about as much as I can to get documentation that we didn't have for a long time, and I was partially successful.
Mm-hmm.
There's still one sealed ex parte meeting that I've still never been able to get. That's been denied. And after all these years, it's 15. Well, yeah, it's past 15 years now. Let's see, 2016 years that there was a ex parte meeting. There was actually two in June of 2009. I got one of them. I got most of one of them. They took out 2 pages that were redacted, and when in fact only parts of those 2 pages were redacted, they wouldn't let me have the other part of those 2 pages. Instead of just drawing a black line through it, they wouldn't let me have it. And then there was another meeting prior to that they wouldn't let me have at all.
Huh.
So what did he say in that's so secret that at this point in time that the public isn't allowed to have? Why would Judge Fox seal it and then not unseal it? I don't get it. But there's no. I don't, as far as I know. I mean, there's, again, not being a lawyer, not having the 974.06 option for some kind of post-conviction relief for Brendan, because it was all in words. There was no evidence at all. So that cuts him off at the knees. Yeah, I really wish that there was some kind of entity, whatever that may be, that could take a outside the state look. Not being from a state, being from a state can create a bias of how you feel about a case because you're from there. It may have affected you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creating someone or an entity to review some of these cases that really need a second or third look. Because what the en banc did to me, I have just so many problems with it. I'm not going to get off on that because I'll get mad and then I'll be done. About that action of the en banc, nothing new was presented. They brought in a couple more new judges, and that's how they won. That's how Schimmel won. He knew it. He even said so.
Well,
It's so hypocritical.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Not only did they bring in 2 new judges, I do believe I'll have to go back and double check, or you may already know this. One of the judges that voted for Brendan was replaced before the en banc, right?
No.
No.
There was one named Thurston or something. He retired. He would have been. Yeah, he retired.
Okay.
No, what they did, I think that there was actually. I'd have to look at my notes. I still got them somewhere.
And did he vote for Brendan?
He would have, but he retired.
Right. So, and his retirement was kind of not planned, if I remember. It's been a while since I looked into this.
I can't say it was not planned, but it was certainly a little bit of a surprise. But he had been on the bench for a long time. He'd been there for a long time. So
right, but why would you stay, participate, and then in the midst of it going to a different level, retire in the middle of it? I just, and knowing that your vote could be a potential to free this person. All right. Like, it's one thing to not be aware of a case, but to be part of a case and then in the midst of it leave. That's not something Supreme Court, even state Supreme Court judges tend to do. One, because, they put a lot of time and effort, as have their law clerks, into researching and studying, learning the facts, the ins and outs of this case. And these are precedent-setting cases, right? We know this. I mean, even though Brendan's still in prison, his case has led to legal change, to law changes. for juveniles. And I found the fact that this judge left curious. And I'm wondering, and this is a hypothetical, of course, I'm wondering if they didn't leverage him out to get someone on the bench they knew would play ball.
Well, as I remember, and I could be remembering wrong, it's been years now. So if I'm wrong, somebody please tell me and I will correct it immediately. But as I remember, there were 9 judges in the 7th Circuit. 7 of them sat on Brendan's case. 2 of them, for whatever reason, did not participate. And I don't recall why. I don't know if it was sickness or vacation or whatever. But that's what I recall. And it could have changed the outcome if they had participated. I'm not saying that they were pressured not to participate. But the thing for me is, Duffin took a year basically to go through the case file. And he detailed literally everything. He didn't leave anything out. He took the whole thing in totality. And of course, that he ordered the release of Brendan. Brad Schimmel fell down several times, fell out of his car, and had 14 heart attacks. And files this emergency, whatever. Gets a stay. It goes to the 7th Circuit. A 3-panel judge voted 2-1. He won again. Not good enough. Brad Schimmel had more heart attacks, public address, and then so they bring in 4 new judges. So now they have 7, and they won by 1 vote. 1. That should tell the court you've got an issue. But here's my problem: not one thing new was presented. Not one thing. How's that not double jeopardy? Within the same court. Somebody please, from a legal mind that's smart, explain it to me like I'm 5. Otherwise, I think it's complete hypocrisy. Makes a laughing stock of the court system. If you're going to use the 3-panel judge system to make your decisions, but hey, we don't like that. And again, this knife cuts both ways. This knife cuts. If they had ruled against Brendan, I would be saying the same thing. You don't get another bite at the apple. They made a decision that no, the lower court definitely was wrong. You're done. Voting you down. So, anyway, I'm going to get down that path, and I don't want to. So, anyway, getting back to the judges that participated, it was a 7-panel system, and I think there were 9 available. So I don't remember why the other 2 didn't participate. So it is what it is. But again, I don't know what they can do. Speaking of Now Ryder and Brendan, to leverage him out without someone that got some juice and the clout to help him.
You're going to have to. The only way you're going to get Brendan out is you're going to have to expose the corruption that's at the heart of the case. That's the only way. Honestly, you're going to have to prove that confession was false. And you're going to have to make it so undeniable that they cannot get away. They're not going to be able to use words.
Wiggle out of it.
Nope, that's exactly right. And short of someone who works for law enforcement telling the truth,
that would be nice.
Yeah.
Somebody maybe at the AG level.
Or a video or documentation or of what truly happened. You know,
Well,
like
one more thing I wanted to bring up before we read this document. It's not that long, but up until October of 2024, and we got this. It's a pretty long report that Skorlinski filed, DCI report from 2009, long after Brendan and Stephen had been sentenced. We get this whole pack of self-interview forms, and then Doc notices that some of these are from May 14th, the day after the interview. So O'Kelly goes back to interview Brendan again. Some of the dates are scratched out on some of these. So, like you said, who's to say that O'Kelly didn't go back and do some jumbling up and reassembling of the forms?
Yeah. And what year was that? May 14th of what?
2006. The day after the day after Fassbender and Wiegert went to the jail, and of course Brendan again. Well, it didn't really work out for him that well that day, but Wiegert did threaten him enough that Brendan made that phone call that night.
When did he go? May 14th?
That was O'Kelly. He went back the next day.
So May 14th was Mother's Day.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. And I find so so they want the public to believe that Brendan his affect is because he's emotionless, correct? But
basically.
Yeah, but do you see how they intentionally used these dates to play on his emotions in order to try and get him to swing the way they wanted him swung?
Well, at the end of that May 13th interview, Wiegert says, when are you going to talk to your mom? Well, they're coming to visit tomorrow. I'll talk to her.
On Mother's Day.
Yeah, don't you think you should call her?
And
are you going to lie to? Am I going to have to call your mom and tell you're lying about your lying, or whatever the hell he said? So Brendan calls that night because Wiegert knew it was recorded.
Of course.
Such crap, man.
And he was no match for them. He's a child, no experience with law enforcement, no clue how to navigate it, no clue whatsoever.
No.
Like he was easy pickings, yo.
Absolutely, he was
easy pickings.
And they found that out on November 6th. O'Neill.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about. There's a question here that Justin put up. Might be a dumb question, but can't he have conjugal visits? Stephen found a fiance while in prison. Can't he do the same? Well, as far as I know, Justin, that's pretty much been cut out. Now, maybe for the rich people that are in these country club prisons, that may be allowed, but
there are certain prisons in certain states where they do have that option, or did. I know in California they had them. I know there's still certain prisons that do it. And it's state by state, but I don't know what the policy is for Wisconsin. I don't know if conjugals are an option. And because he's considered, and I don't think just because Stephen has found multiple fiancés, because, there's these pen pal sites, right, at prisoner.com and stuff. I don't know if y'all ever, one of the few TV shows I still watch is Love After Lockup. It's a reality TV show about people who find people in prison and then their relationship when they get out. It makes for interesting drama TV. But anywho,
I've been watching. You said that. I just wanted to share this with everyone. And I don't know how much people watch, live police coverage. What I mean by there are certain YouTube channels that create compilations of cops interacting with the public in whatever capacity, theft or shoplifting or high-speed chase. It is crazy. I mean, this is real live body cam footage. It's not, well, I guess there's some edits, but not much. These certain channels get this body cam footage and dash cam footage and create compilations. Some of them are hours long, very interesting. And I don't think, and I did, and I still do appreciate good police work, because some people, they're stone dead drunk, they fight, they're complete. Some people should never touch alcohol because it makes them, it breaks their brain completely. I've told this to my youngest kid. They should never be allowed to touch alcohol because something inside their brain goes wrong. Otherwise, they're a normal person. They get some alcohol in them, they are completely bananas. Completely.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I am. So as someone who's worked as a bartender, cocktail waitress, all the things, there are people, and then there are some people who can take a drink, can drink 4 drinks, can drink 6 drinks, but then there's that one drink, and they will go from happy, just happy drunk to an out of control maniac. I've seen that too. Yeah, I mean, alcohol's and it's not just alcohol, it's drugs too. Like some people can socially use drugs. There's several states where it's now legal to do drugs that I don't think should ever be legal, and that blows my mind. As a former drug addict, I think making it okay to do hard drugs out in the open is never going to lead to a functional society.
I agree.
Because no, that just blows my mind. But anyway, I like those body cam footages because I've interacted with police officers, and it's really interesting. Some people, it doesn't bother me that I know with all these smart appliances with cameras in my home, there is a potential for people to hack that system and watch me. Okay. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't. I don't do anything behind closed doors that, I wouldn't do in public, minus going to the bathroom and stuff. And I don't have a camera in my bathroom. So, that being said, there are people who, once they realize that, their privacy isn't as private as they think it is with these smart appliances, it nuts them up. They get really
defensive.
They get really discombobulated. They cannot function. And I'm thinking to myself, what is so, it's just really weird. It's really weird. And so I say all that to say, I got pulled over by a police officer one time, and my ex started videoing them. And that the police officers went from being all we're going to pull you out, we're going to search your vehicle, we're going to do all these things, to let me run your license, let me check your tag or check your insurance, and letting me go. And I find that behavior interesting because it shows that they were clearly targeting us
That's a little
And
sketchy. Yeah, that's pretty sketchy.
yeah, and they had got caught doing it.
Yeah, that's pretty sketchy if they
Mm-hmm.
get the attitude change. But
Yep.
a lot of the ones that, well, actually the bulk of the ones I watched, they're not like that now. They're like, people pull out their phones. I'm gonna record you, and the cop says that's fine. I'm recording you too. It's all audio and video recorded. So,
Yep.
and I personally just seeing, it's not only some of the minor things that are captured on body cam, it's some of the really horrendous stuff. I appreciate all the honest, hard work cops do because we must have a guardian at the door. There's got to be that gate because otherwise, oh my God, some people there's no end to the selfishness and self-centered things that they'll do just because it benefits them. It doesn't matter who it destroys and the lives they destroy along the way. They don't care. They just don't care. Hey, we got a few questions here. Doc's starting to answer. Let's see where that at. Right there.
And I agree. I also respect hardworking, honest, ethical law enforcement.
Absolutely, we need it.
And we do need someone. They're watchmen. Like truly, that's like if you go back to antiquity, that's what they are. But I do also believe the more power you give someone, the more.
Well, there's the option to corrupt it.
Yes, the more power you give someone, the more potential the wrong person is going to take that power and then use it for bad. That's right.
Yeah. All right. For George has asked, at what date had Stephen cut his finger? Doc said that he reopened his wound on the finger on the evening of November 3rd, prior to going to Menards with his brother Chuck. Yeah, and I can't remember. Maybe Doc can. Maybe it's down here. I don't remember exactly when he cut that finger, but it was prior to. Prior to October 31st, he cut it on a piece of sheet metal or something. But I don't think we have an exact date, Georges. Another question in this. Where was Bobby when Stephen left his trailer with blood in the sink? Did Steve... Okay. Well, that was the evening of November 3rd, if I'm remembering right, or 4th. I know that Stephen and Chuck, Stephen and Chuck went to Menards.
Yeah, I think that was the 4th. Wasn't Menards the 3rd or the 4th?
3rd, I think. Yeah, Doc got it right here. That's correct. He had reopened it and ran back in to put some tape on it or whatever the hell he did. So it was the 3rd. As far as where Bobby was, I can't. I would imagine at that point in the afternoon he would have been asleep because he works in the evening. So, but I don't know that for positive. I can't remember, George's. And the last question is, did Stephen lock his grand dam? Can't answer that one either. I don't know.
Did Stephen what? Lock it?
Lock his grand dam.
No, they didn't lock those vehicles because they didn't need to. They were all family. And I think that's probably where the blood came from that was put in the RAV4. If it is indeed Stephen's blood.
Well, it was certainly a source that was available, mid-afternoon on November 6th. Right there with the RAV. So
yeah,
I don't know. I can't prove that, but I certainly have real trust issues with Wisconsin Crime Lab in Madison. Boxley's got a question. What are people's thoughts on multiple fake IDs being used by state players' supporters? I think it's well-established KK has used many, but I'm aware of quite a few other possibilities. Well, I guess that's a choice for people if they want to use an alt. Um, I've only done it one time, and it was basically on Reddit to. It was never to post anything about the case. It was to experiment with certain settings as a moderator that you can use within a subreddit. So I would use an alt to do that, like a test alt. I think it was actually named test something, whatever the hell it was. But other than that, a lot of people do use an alt. I never have. I've always been Jack or some version of Jack for God years, decades. But some people find, for whatever reason, find it necessary to do so. Hey, that's their choice. I don't necessarily agree with it, but if you're, I mean, to me, if you have something to say, just say it. It can always be worded in a way that's um, to get your point across without, I guess, honking off everybody under the sun. Unless that's your intention. Some people have that intention. They want to, make people mad, gaslight them. So it's just something that I don't necessarily agree with, but hey, it's a choice. So anyway, if everybody's ready, we've yapped quite a bit here. Let's take a look at this document. It's not that long. It's
I just want to add, while you're pulling
Yeah.
up the document, I think a lot of these state supporters that have been around for a long time have alts.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's absolutely no doubt. I know that there are several that do. Again, I don't necessarily agree with it because if you're going to use an alt, that kind of lends itself to being you're not going to be straightforward to begin with, right? And I get, some people are they don't want their online persona, social media, to be linked in any way to the real life because of job or whatever the case may be. And I get that. I do, because some employers monitor that stuff and they take a dim view of, whatever you might be thinking about doing that might be offensive to a lot of people. And I get that. So I guess a case can be made that way, but not everyone takes an alt for that reason. They do it to hide who they are. We've had many people in the past say, I'm new to the case and, what's this and this. But in fact, that they're actually somebody that's been in it as long as you have and they know as much as you do. I've seen that so many times.
So, yeah, me too.
Anyway, this was filed a couple of weeks ago, as everybody can see up here in the upper right, 2/13/2025. So it's been a couple of weeks. Obviously, I'd hoped to do it prior to this, but the things just didn't work out. And but now we're here. So let's get into this. And like I said, I've only read a page and a half, I think, and I stopped. This was a response to petition for review. Kaul and Comfort. She's an AG, of course, as we know, from the DOJ. I'm gonna blow this up a little bit for my old eyes. There we go. How about we split this up? I'll read a little and you can read a little, so we're not both having to read everything. You good with that, Christina?
I am.
Okay. All right, I'll start us off, and this is going to be one of those. If I read something that's going to, take me down to the basement, I'm probably going to say something, but otherwise I'm just going to try to read. All right. Introduction. Defendant appellate petitioner Stephen A. Avery has now filed his third petition for review in this court. This time, contending that the Circuit Court and the Court of Appeals erred in finding insufficiently pled his insufficiently pled his latest of many successive claims that he could establish a Denny, it's got a footnote, third-party perpetrator defense and attempt to pin the crime on his nephew, Bobby Dassey. Let's read the footnote. Oh, it's just a citation. State v. Denny. Okay. In a per curiam opinion, I'm going to comment here. The per curiam means this can't be used to be cited in another case. Basically, same thing the Court of Appeals did. It was a per curiam decision, which means they don't want this used in another case. It's total hypocrisy. It's complete. Anyway. In a per curiam opinion, the Court of Appeals upheld the Circuit Court's determination that he did not meet his pleading burden, as he provided no facts that could meet any of the three prongs of the quote-unquote legitimate tendency test for introducing such a defense. Thus, his purported newly discovered evidence was not material. I got a problem with this that I'll just briefly say. The Court of Appeals did basically the same thing as Judge Angie did. In my opinion, they treated the RAV as not evidence. And it's the most important piece of evidence that there is in the case. The most important. Anyway.
I agree. It's the only place with the victim's actual blood in it. It's the only place where we have proof that some sort of violence occurred besides an object which is able to be transported being found on Stephen's property, right?
Correct.
Because the bullet fragment is a movable object.
That's right.
And whereas the blood splatter in the back of the RAV is proof of some sort of an event that caused blood to come from her.
That's right. That's right. All right. There is no novel, important, or conflicting law at issue, and nothing worthy of this court's review raised by the case. As with his previous petition, Avery has ignored the fact that the only issue raised by this case is whether he met the post-conviction pleading standard. Instead, he has again attempted to revive claims he forfeited in either the Circuit Court or the Court of Appeals. He makes nonsensical circular arguments that have no support in the law, and he bases his claims on increasingly absurd conjecture untethered from the facts. The only legal principle at issue here is whether Avery sufficiently pled his Denny claim in his motion to warrant a hearing. The case law on which this claim relies has been established for decades, and both the Circuit Court and the Court of Appeals properly applied it. The petition should be denied. Well, I don't agree with you, Kaul. I don't agree with you at all. Background. A jury convicted Avery in 2007 of the first-degree intentional homicide of Teresa Halbach. Avery raised on direct appeal a claim that he should have been permitted to raise a Denny defense alleging several potential third-party perpetrators, including Bobby Dassey. The Court of Appeals rejected that argument, holding that Avery could not meet the three-pronged quote-unquote legitimate tendency test as to Bobby, and affirmed. Avery has been attempting to fill the gaps in his third-party perpetrator theory ever since. This petition arises from the denial of his third, though really his fifth, collateral attack motion under Wisconsin Statute 97406. This time, Avery claimed that a new witness, Thomas Sawinski, quote, provides the missing direct connection between Bobby and Miss Halbach's murder, end quote, because Sawinski claimed he saw Bobby Dassey and an unknown older male pushing a car similar to the victim's down Avery Road during the early morning hours of November 5, 2005, 5 days after the murder, while Sawinski was delivering newspapers to the property. Another footnote. Footnote says Sawinski's story changed repeatedly, landing on this version of events only after somehow having his memory refreshed by Avery's current post-conviction counsel. Okay, continuing. Avery alleged that this provided a quote-unquote direct connection to the murder. He argued he could show Bobby had a sexual motive because some pornography was found on the communal Dassey home computer. Some pornography? Are you kidding me? Wow. Talk about downplaying, Kaul. And he argued he could show opportunity because Bobby was on the property and knew Avery's hand was bleeding on November 3rd, 2005, which he claimed would allow Bobby to plant Avery's blood in the victim's car and access her keys, electronics, and license plate. Avery did not explain in his motion how planting his blood could have been accomplished, nor account for any of the rest of the evidence against him. Months after briefing was completed, Avery filed another affidavit in the circuit court from a Thomas Baresh who claimed that he saw Bobby Dassey driving a RAV4 in the early morning hours of November 5, 2005. He added a single paragraph to his motion claiming that Baresh's affidavit corroborated Sawinski's, with no other argument related to Baresh. Here's the thing, though, that Kaul is leaving out is the phone call. The phone call that Sawinski made on November 6th.
Oh, yeah. I was
That
thinking.
that phone call gives his claim, his affidavit, whether it's changed or not, some teeth.
Well,
and they never went back and talked to him. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, what I was going to say is it really establishes that Sawinski saw something.
Correct.
Right? Because there's evidence that he tried to report it in real time. And that is a huge piece of corroborative evidence that gives weight to the legitimacy of what Zellner is stating in Sawinski's affidavit as to what he witnessed. Now, what I do want to add is if we were to remove Bobby Dassey as who Sawinski saw and insert a blank space and say that whomever it is, because I truly believe that Bobby Dassey is the person being inserted, but not actually who it was that was witnessed. That's my belief. My belief is that Zellner, as well as law enforcement, as well as the DAs that are filing this motion, know that Sawinski saw something other than Bobby Dassey, and it's probably a cop. And I think that he saw the cops planning the vehicle, and it gives a weight to the fact that he's framed again. But you can't make that argument on paperwork without hardcore evidence of it. And you're not going to be able to do that until you get those fingerprints ran that they collected off the RAV, or get someone to actually go over the RAV that can, type all the things that did not come back to Stephen and Brendan that have never
back and run it through
CODIS and run those fingerprints. Yep. That don't belong to the Averys, don't belong to the Dasseys. Yep. And I think that's really that could really turn the tide in this case.
Well, we have another problem here because not only did this call occur, MTSO withheld it for 16 and a half years. They withheld it, refused to give it up, And, in fact, That call came in early 2022 when Rookie was able to get. We got thousands of calls and radio transmissions that had been missing for years. That after Ledvana left, oh wow, look at what we got this stack here. What's this? Oh, it's more stuff. Well, what else are they holding? I have to. You that is an automatic. What else is back there that they are withholding? There's just absolutely no way around it for me. Been into a lot of debates on X about these various pieces of evidence that don't work. Various pieces of things that are reported that they go for as far as a phone call or some mention of it somewhere, but there's they never get entered into evidence. And I can speak specifically because I just had a comment a little while ago on X, talking about again the September 2006 reply brief that Fallon wrote, and he talks about the clandestine burial site and bones being found. I'm being told he made a boo-boo. He got it wrong. It was just a mistake. Okay, I'm fine with someone wants to believe that Fallon got some kind of piece of information wrong. But my problem with that is well, it's more than one thing. If I'm honest, it's the length of time that 20, 30 cops, maybe more. We don't really know the full impact of how much resources they pulled to Cuss Road, but how long they stayed to bring out a peat moss bag and a rod and pallet. Literally, it wasn't all day, but it was damn near. It was a good chunk of the day into dark that they were there. How does that work? How long does it actually take to pull back out of this clandestine burial site? And number two, why would somebody dig a burial site to bury a peat moss bag in a pallet?
Why would you label it a burial site? Why wouldn't you say a hole or a freshly dug hole? Why are you calling it a burial site to begin with?
And where are the photos of the peat moss bag and the rotten pallet?
And then there's also the email which was, I can't remember the year. I feel like it was 2016, 17, where he wants to go on a tour, right?
That was gone 2018, right. I think, after Zellner filed.
Yep. Gone wants to go look at this stuff.
Yep.
And what does he call it in his email?
No, nothing but a stump or something. I don't remember.
No, he says, I want to look at the burial.
Oh, yeah, he did. That's right. He did.
Yeah, in the email, I want to go look at the burial site off of Cuss Road. Why are you still labeling it as a burial site if all it was a hole where the peat moss bag was found? Why wouldn't you label it as such?
Well, exactly.
Like O'Kelly says, the truth is but a chameleon hid within our words.
That's right. Why? And Doc brought up a good point. This was also mentioned by Fassbender during pretrial about this burial site. Again, why label it as that if it's just a freaking hole? If somebody, for whatever reason, has buried these items, that doesn't work. So there are numerous things that tell me that Fallon knows more than the rest of us. I don't know why Fallon, because it's being called a secret. I don't know why Fallon would have put it in his brief. I really can't answer that. But in my mind, he's thinking that everybody knows. It's been released. Everybody knows that this is what they found. It wasn't a big deal. Okay, bones found, some kind of cremains found at Cuss Road. Nothing entered into any of the ledgers. Nothing tested from the results. November 9, simple calls. Him and some DC agents have found 2 5-gallon buckets of bones at least. And nothing's entered. It's gone. It's lost. These things are completely downplayed and ignored. I guess because maybe they weren't brought up on appeal. I don't know. There are just a number of things that motivate me to say, okay, I can't follow the path of the Gilder side. I can't let that go because otherwise, why would these various, I mean, these are huge mistakes, man. If they're mistakes, there's some glaring problems. You got some people that don't know what they're doing and they need to be removed. Hell, on that grounds alone, you got real legal problems for me. Anyway, they never, whatever Singlov did after Sowinski called and made the report, whatever Singlov really did, we don't really know. He could have just not said anything. He could have told, I don't know, maybe he called Uyghur and Fast. I have no idea. Or some other people there and said, hey, you've got this guy says he saw what he thinks is, this woman's car being pushed down Avery Road the other night. Maybe we should go talk to him. But the fact is, he was on the property every day, and they never talked to him. And that's a real, Doc pointed that out. That's a real problem for me. They talked to people that maybe went and bought a part. They talked to people that just because they lived nearby, that had no connection at all to the salvage yard. But this guy that's on the property every day, and makes a phone call, they never even attempt to interview him. It's a real red flag to me. But we don't know what Singlov did. We don't. So anyway, let's continue on. You want to start here where it says the circuit court denied? Read
Yes.
for a bit.
The circuit court denied the motion, finding that Avery's motion was insufficiently pled on all three prongs of Denny, and thus failed to meet the materiality prong of the newly discovered evidence test. I'm not going to read the petition
No, you don't have, just skip.
Okay.
You can skip the citations.
All right. The Court of Appeals agreed, noting that nearly all of Avery's allegations were unsupported by and often contradicted by the evidence he submitted and the existing record. Only 3 of the pornography searches that he contended showed motive occurred before the murder, and during the time frame he contended only Bobby could have searched for them, and he failed to provide any facts to connect even those to Bobby, meaning he failed to provide sufficient facts on motive. Even assuming Sowinski's evidence was believed and that it was actually the victim's RAV4 he saw, what else could it have been? Avery failed to connect Bobby to any of the rest of the enormous enormous amount of evidence pointing to Avery as the killer, nor provide any facts showing that Bobby had the skills, tools, knowledge, time, or ability to stage the rest of the scene. It's almost a sarcastic probe at Stephen and Zellner, because the underlying fact is they know the cops framed. In my opinion, who's writing this? Comfort and
Kaul?
Yeah, Comfort and Kaul know what happened here. All right, they know. They're not idiots. All right, and they know Stephen didn't commit this crime, right? And so this is just they're like getting their rocks off writing this, because they know just like Zellner knows that Bobby is the key to opening the door to getting this case back into court. once you get into court, you present the evidence. This is my opinion. You're going to lay the foundation of how he was framed, right? And that's what Sawinski is.
Well,
Sawinski is the eyewitness.
You never know what can happen during a hearing.
Yes. Well, in my opinion, Sawinski witnessed the police putting the car on the property. And I think there's overwhelming evidence that shows that they know that they got busted, simply because we also have those weird interviews of the Avery neighbors where they ask what time the mail runs or the newspaper.
And the newspaper. And they never talked to the guy. They never talked to him.
That's right. But why would you ask them that question unless you had that phone call? Because what does the mail and newspaper have to do with the crime being committed? You're not investigating a crime that occurred during the time that the mail ran or the time that the newspaper ran, right? Because you believe she was killed on an Auto Trader photo shoot. So anyway,
I got this part
back to where I was.
But before you continue, he started this really long sentence off. Even assuming Sawinski's evidence was believed. So you've got someone. It didn't have to be Bobby. It could be anyone. And I don't necessarily believe it was Bobby. But hey, everybody's got a right to their own opinion. It doesn't matter who it is. That rat being seen and in possession of someone after she's reported missing is the problem. And he's completely whitewashing it, saying, well, even if Bobby was driving it, he doesn't have the skills to do all this stuff. Well, he's driving the car. Maybe somebody that's with him, or whoever this person is, has the skills to do whatever.
I just got to thinking, who was the older gentleman that saw a vehicle followed by a Jeep?
That was Siebert.
All right. And who do we know that was driving a Jeep at that time, a Jeep Cherokee? Remaker.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did it. Yeah, that's right. That's
Isn't that interesting?
It is, and he's got.
Yeah, I just thought about that.
All right.
Okay, where did I leave off? Okay. Avery, Avery failed to connect Bobby to any of the rest of the enormous amount.
Yeah, it's big. It's big.
It's big, huge. Pointing to, and in reality, it's not pointing to Avery as the killer. But please believe what we say.
Yeah.
Pointing to Avery as the killer, nor provide any facts. None at all. No facts.
Nope.
Showing that Bobby had the skills, tools, knowledge, time, or ability to stage the rest of the scene, or how he could have done so. Meaning, he also failed to provide sufficient facts to show opportunity.
That's right.
And again, assuming it was even the victim's RAV4 or a RAV4 at all, as opposed to a similar model that Sawinski saw, Bobby pushing the victim's car down a road with another individual 5 days after the murder would not provide a direct connection between Bobby and the perpetration. What a long run-on sentence. And the perpetration of the murder, nor any direct connection to the rest of the forensic evidence. That's wow. The Court of Appeals thus concluded that because Avery's post-conviction motion did not allege sufficient facts to satisfy the Denning requirements for third-party perpetrator evidence, the Sawinski evidence is not material and therefore does not satisfy the newly discovered evidence test. It, like the circuit court, therefore declined to address whether the evidence was merely cumulative and whether there was a reasonable probability of a different result, because Avery's motion was insufficiently pled to necessitate reaching that analysis. The Court of Appeals also found that Avery's motion was insufficiently pled in regard to the Baresh affidavit. Avery referenced Baresh one time in the entirety of his post-conviction motion. He did not offer any analysis or assertions within his motion as to how Baresh's affidavit met the 4 criteria of newly discovered evidence or established a reasonable probability that a different result would be reached at trial. Avery petitions this court for review. All right, do we have commentary, questions?
Well, again, they completely leave out the phone call.
Mm-hmm. Or the fact, they leave out the phone call, or the fact that they went and questioned the Avery neighbors and they were disingenuous about their questioning, like the framing of the questions listed in the police reports,
right,
and the framing of the answers were slanted to help defend the assertion that Sawinski's, or how do I say this? So the way they questioned the neighbor, they didn't ask a question that would actually garner the truth, because they didn't say, what time is your newspaper delivered? They listed it in the police report, if I recall correctly, what time do you get your newspaper? And those are 2 different things, right?
Yep.
Okay, because your newspaper is delivered at a time and you go and get it at whatever time. Those 2 times are not necessarily going to be the same time. So you're not even trying to get the facts to support that you were trying to investigate a phone call. All you're doing is a CYA, which to me only establishes that you knew a call had come in, even though there's no report about the call, which is disingenuous in itself, because why would you not log that call in?
I agree.
When
there's
you're
so
looking
much
for
that
the truth.
There's not so much that went unreported by the MTSO officers. Several of them didn't report at all. I do think Sing Love is in there. He's got a little bit. He doesn't have too much in the summary report from MTSO, but he didn't mention it at all. So again, it's a red flag for me. I have a problem with it.
If we are to trust and have faith that this is an honest investigation and Stephen is just, balls to the wall, obviously guilty, and this was ethical, and the only thing they were looking for was justice, and MTSO only played a roundabout role. They were hands off. We're supposed to believe all of this. They're not really
it's completely it's completely disingenuous what I've read so far.
Yeah, they're not really, the evidence really doesn't support the narrative that they want us to, to swallow hook, line, and sinker.
You have to you have to be willing to compromise, and I'm not. You got to be willing to just say, oh, well, that stuff don't really matter. Those events don't really count, but they do count because there's an effect, cause and effect. Anyway, all right. You want me to read some of this argument?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Argument. This court's function is to develop and classify the law. It gives a citation to Bloom versus First Auto in case Cass Insurance Company. Nothing Avery raises in his petition is appropriate for this court's review because his petition again raises claims he abandoned below and otherwise deals only with well-established law on the post-conviction pleading standard, needing no clarification. First, Avery attempts to resurrect claims that he forfeited below and that are therefore not preserved in this court. Avery claims that the Court of Appeals misapplied Brady v. Maryland and erroneously denied his inappropriate request for a new trial in the interest of justice. It could not have been clearer that these claims were forfeited in the Court of Appeals. I'm sure he's talking about the Veely CD. And the Court of Appeals, in their response before, said under certain conditions would the Veely CD could apply. They told Zellner that. It wasn't anything, she didn't just add this in just for kicks. They told her what she could do, and she did. She followed what they said. Let's continue. Avery raised those claims in the circuit court, but made not a single argument on either issue in his brief in the Court of Appeals. His arguments there was that he met the materiality prong of the newly discovered evidence test under State v. Edmonds, which, of course, uses the same standard as Brady. Avery did not preserve a Brady claim merely by citing it for the general materiality standard. There is no argument on the three prongs of a Brady claim anywhere in Avery's brief to the Court of Appeals. Let's scroll up here. And he never once mentioned even the statute for an interest of justice claim, let alone made any argument that he was due relief under it. Argument not raised in the appellate's brief to the Court of Appeals are forfeited in this court. The citation, Avery forfeited these claims. Avery's claim that Sawinski's account was material independently of the Denny test is also forfeited due to his failure to raise that argument in the circuit court. There he argued only that the Sawinski evidence met the materiality prong of the newly discovered evidence test because it satisfied the three prongs of Denny. The Court of Appeals thus held that Avery failed to sufficiently plead this argument in the circuit court to preserve it for appellate review. Okay. Second, and more importantly, the only legal issue raised by this case is whether Avery provided sufficient facts in his motion to require a hearing on his newly discovered evidence claim. Whether he sufficiently showed that he could prove at a hearing that Sawinski's evidence was material necessarily revolved around whether Avery pled sufficient facts to meet the three prongs of Denny, because otherwise his allegations against Bobby Dassey would be inadmissible, and inadmissible evidence is not material. State v. whatever. The Court of Appeals appropriately looked to the substance pled within the four corners of Avery's motion and compared it to the facts on which he based it and the existing record. State has got another citation. It correctly determined that neither the evidence Avery submitted nor the facts of the record were sufficient to support Avery's legal conclusions on any of the three prongs of Denny, Thus, Avery failed to show Sawinski's evidence was material as required by newly discovered evidence test. Really? This court has already established that the mere speculation that a third party committed the crime is insufficient, and then that Avery's failure on any one of those prongs would mean his motion was insufficiently pled. State v. Wilson. There is nothing unclear about Wilson that needs this court's attention, nor is there anything needing clarification about what is required for newly discovered evidence to be material. As the state explained previously, these pleading standards and what constitutes sufficient material and non-conclusory facts to entitle the defendant to a hearing have been fully articulated for decades, and in cases too numerous to count. Bunch of citations. The final reason this case is inappropriate for this court's review is because it would not change the outcome here. The record plainly shows that there is no probability a different result, even if Avery presented his factually unsupported Denny defense. Again, he's leaving out the phone call. He completely ignores it. Isn't that a live omission by the AG of the state?
It's really obvious when
It's
they're
troubling.
playing dirty.
Yeah, it's troubling.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't you continue from here unless you want me to read? I'll read if you want. But
That's okay. I'll go.
okay.
There are, right? That's where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay. There are far too many irreconcilable inconsistencies between Avery's allegations about Bobby Dassey and the actual evidence produced at trial, particularly fatal. Wow. The use of these key words, like these key emotive words, is so funny. Particularly fatal would be Avery's complete failure to explain how, when, or where Bobby Dassey could have abducted, killed, and hidden the victim or her car in the roughly 15 minutes between her arrival on the property and Scott Taddick passing Bobby on the highway. So that's really interesting because we've seen the video, and I'm pretty sure that is in the record in one of her submissions, like what we saw in the little video she put together. Yeah. I'm pretty sure back in one of the first briefs, she submitted all that. So they're not even sticking to the record, the Court of Appeals record, to make these arguments. They're going off they're either filing this motion knowing that the Court of Appeals has no clue what's already been filed, or thinking that they don't care.
I don't remember in the Court of Appeals, maybe they did, but I don't remember the Court of Appeals even raising this issue where Bobby and Scott alibied each other. I can't remember. Maybe they did. I don't recall.
Yeah, there's been so much filed.
Oh yeah.
In the court in the post conviction, it would be interesting to do some sort of a what's it called? A synopsis of arguments made, of statements made on both sides, just to see like who's contradicted themselves more, how many clearly untrue statements have been made on either side. I would be interested to see, truly. Well, I'll have to look into seeing if with now that AI is such an easily available tool.
Yeah.
If it could help us try and streamline that. Sorry. There are far too many irreconcilable differences between Avery's allegations about Bobby Dassey and the actual evidence produced at trial. Particularly fatal would be Avery's complete failure to explain how, when, or where Bobby Dassey could have abducted, killed, and hidden the victim or her car in the roughly 15 minutes between her arrival on the property and Scott Haddock passing Bobby on the highway. I think that says more about the fact that Scott didn't really see him. His failure to provide any plausible method how Bobby Dassey could have transferred Avery's blood from his sink to the RAV4, his utter failure to account for his DNA on the hood latch of the RAV4 or its keys, or any explanation how Bobby could have transferred his touch DNA to those items, his inability to explain how Miss Halbach's remains, including a fragment from virtually every, that's just such a lie. This statement right here is a lie. Including a fragment from virtually every bone in the human body. How much of the bones were recovered, supposedly?
Roughly 40%.
Okay. And you're going to tell me that in those 40% of minuscule bone fragments, supposedly, they were able to determine that almost every bone was accounted for, when the largest piece supposedly was smaller than a fingernail. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it. Could be transferred to his burn pit undetected, or when that could have occurred. His inability to explain how or where Bobby hid the RAV4 for 5 days or moved it to the location. Think about that statement. We know how they're saying it was moved. Dude saw him pushing it.
Yep.
Like, that's not even truthful. Or moved it to the location where it was eventually found. Or how or when he managed to get into his uncle's trailer undetected. He lived next door.
Yep.
Plant the keys. And nothing to explain how Bobby could possibly be responsible for the bullet with Miss Halbach's DNA on it being found in Avery's garage and matched to the gun above his bed. Oh, gosh. No, I'm just it's so nauseating
Hard to
that
read.
it's so regurgitated.
Yep.
And we know that 22's bullets, one, are a dime a dozen. That we know that the kind of forensic bullet matching used in this case is highly unreliable and has been overturned multiple times on appeal in wrongful conviction cases. Oh, wow. And we know all the sliminess that was done behind the scenes by the techs to get these matches. Let's not even go there. Like, you know what I mean? Like what Culhane had to do to get these matches with the item FL. How she had to go outside her lab and get a supervisor to sign off after she contaminated.
She wasn't a supervisor.
I know.
She was just another lab tech over in Milwaukee.
Yeah, she didn't even have the authority to override that's right. Good point. Like, none of that. You're not being honest about any of this. And if truth and justice is what the motive is behind your effort is, why would you not tell the truth?
Because they can't.
Yeah, exactly. Because the truth would set them free. That's why. That's why. All right, sorry. Let me get back to where I was at. All right. And nothing to explain how Bobby could possibly be responsible for the bullet with Miss Halbach's DNA on it being found in Avery's garage and matched to the gun above his bed. Nor did Avery provide any realistic explanation or any explanation why someone trying to frame him, oh my goodness, why would have gone to such lengths to hide the evidence? Can we just say cough, cough, 36 million, cough, cough? Moreover, the state would negate whatever little credibility Sawinski and Baresh had on the stand. It could easily impeach Sawinski with the glaring inconsistencies between his latest story and Sawinski's prior statements Avery submitted previously. And in fact, Sawinski's original information to current defense counsel would have eliminated Bobby Dassey as a suspect because Bobby was at work during the time frame Sawinski gave. And this second, I know.
No, he wasn't.
So they're lying again.
Anyway, go ahead.
And this second person he purportedly saw has never been identified. And why is that a problem? Meaning Sawinski's information could not even actually point to Bobby as an exclusive possession of the car. Exclusive? What does it matter? Let's say he really did see Bobby pushing the car with an unnamed second party. The fact that someone other than Stephen was pushing the victim's car onto the property 4 days after she disappeared is a problem.
Yep.
Because it destroys the state's narrative of what happened to Teresa Halbach. Because her car never left the property. And if her car left the property and was pushed back on the property or driven back on the property 4 days later, that means Stephen didn't abduct, hold her hostage, sexually assault her, get his nephew involved, then murder her, and then burn her in a burn pit on a Halloween fire and put her on a creeper and do all the things, right? So
right.
It doesn't matter who helped him push the car back on the property. If he, in fact, was ever in possession of the car, it means the story told at trial by the prosecutors is a load of crap. And Stephen was framed yet again for a crime he didn't commit.
Well, again, that's why I've said all along since we found out about Sawinski, it could have been anyone in possession of that car. That's a problem. Mm-hmm. That's the problem right there. No matter who the hell it was. So, anyway.
And we have multiple witnesses saying they saw that car parked on the side of
147.
Yep. So to pretend like there isn't evidence saying that the car was off the property and then came back on it is a problem.
Yep.
Because you're not being honest about the evidence in this case.
I agree.
Baresh's generic claims suffered similar failings. In particular, his failure to explain why he did not bring this information to any of Avery's attorneys until nearly 20 years after the murder and after Avery's latest attorney put up $100,000 bounty for purported witnesses. Additionally, Baresh has claimed that he saw Bobby Dassey, whom he claims he does not know, but somehow recalled that this is who he saw years later, driving a RAV4, contradicts Sawinski's claim that he saw him pushing one the same day or same morning. Avery's now defense would essentially be just asking the jury to ignore the evidence introduced against him. When presented with a common sense explanation that the evidence was located where it was because Avery shot and killed the victim after luring her to the property and unsuccessfully attempted to hide the evidence of his crime, versus, yeah, it's so bad, versus Avery's attempt to paint the then teenage Bobby as a porn obsessed, scientifically savvy. Well, you're giving them a lot of credit. And extraordinarily stealthy. You're giving them a lot of credit because they got busted all the way around. Criminal mastermind who inexplicably wanted to frame his uncle. No one would have a reasonable doubt about Avery's guilt. You want to take over?
Sure. In short, Avery's petition concerns only the application of well-settled law to the facts and rests on claims that would not succeed even if this court were to grant a review. There is no law development to be done here. Review would be a waste of this court's scarce time and resources. Conclusion: Avery's petition for review should be denied. Dated this day, 13th of February, 2025. Respectfully, Josh Kaul and Lisa Kumper from the Wisconsin DOJ. Well, all these, I'm not a good English person, but verbs or whatever, action type insertion of these extraordinary blah, blah, blah words is pretty telling to me. And again, throughout this entire thing, they never mentioned the call. They never mentioned the fact that Sawinski was never interviewed after his call.
It's all emotive language and no truthful, factual language.
I agree.
And that's a lot. And you see a lot of that when people aren't being honest. They play on your emotions, so you're not logically thinking. They want you to stay in a how dare they, right? Oh my gosh, it's awful, because they play on your past trauma and your past, hurt, to keep you from actually sitting down and thinking about how ridiculous and how that's a terrible argument. That whole brief is crap, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's from the top guy and one of his delegates. There's a lot of omission in that brief. A lot of omission. Just left it out. So I have real problems with that. Of course, I knew I would. I put this picture here up because there's been a lot of discussion about the burn barrels. I say a lot. There's been some. I won't say necessarily a lot about the burn barrels and the chain of custody. These are also part of the case that is inexplicable. No one, and I mean no one, in all this time has been able to correctly trace the route, chain of custody wise, of the burn barrels based on the information we have. That's, again, another event in the case. You can look at any of these events. Is it unfair for us to question what happened, even though, some things were missed? I think if there were a few minor things that might have been overlooked or not necessarily recorded or turned over, maybe we would be a little harsh. But that's not the case here. It's not. And we just saw evidence of this in Kaul's and Kumper's attempt to just completely omit all this other stuff. I know it wasn't presented in Zellner's brief. A lot of that stuff is long past. But if it ever went to trial, a retrial, all this stuff would come out. And they do not want that. I promise you, they do not want that. Well, hello, Devin from the Clack family. Thanks for dropping by. I didn't really have. I've got at least one question here I didn't see along the way. Doc's done pretty good about explaining things. There's Grammy. Hey, Grammy.
Hi, Grammy. Hi, Clack family. What I find interesting is I think one of the biggest clues that people were doing things trying to create evidence, or I shouldn't say create evidence, but to place evidence back on the scene is the fact that what was found in the Dassey burn barrels.
Cut. I can't remember which bone, but there was cut and hesitation cut bones in there.
Yeah. Yep. And
it's unfortunate that Brutus hit on that barrel, but at the time they didn't dig into it and see what was in there. Yeah. And they should have. They should have looked immediately as to what the source was. Yes.
Of video. They should have documented those barrels prior to removing them. That's evidence 101. And the fact that they didn't is like a huge red flag for me. It just says to me that someone did something that didn't realize there were separate barrels for the families.
Well, yeah, he had Avery had one. I think the Dasseys had three or four. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did want to answer this question here, 3 RAV4s. I'm not sure where this came from. I didn't go up far enough. Maybe 3 teeth on it. That's a new one. Where's the pictures and reports? As I understand it, there were 3 tooth fragments that Dr. Simley glued together.
Yeah, and it weren't even tooth fragments. They were supposed root fragments, right?
Well, part of one was a root fragment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd have to reread it to find exactly.
Yeah, so analyzing Smiley's report is a rabbit hole in itself. 7 Pop did a really good job shredding any legitimacy to the weight of what they presented at trial.
Well, that's why Simley said on the stand, he could not 100% guarantee, beyond the scientific blah, 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 that this was Teresa.
That's right.
But and it was just more we're going to infer that it was Teresa.
Right. And the x-rays are so sketch.
Oh, yeah.
Because one is like a panoramic and then the other is like an there's no, because we don't have a skull. So you're using an x-ray, a panoramic x-ray, and then you're gluing tooth fragments and you're taking a picture or an x-ray of those and a panoramic and a regular x-ray. I can't remember exactly how 7 Pop put it, but basically it doesn't in any way establish a match.
Correct.
At all.
She
can't even infer.
She worked for Dennis Haas for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. And so that's so you take out the dental ID because it's not near as conclusive as the argument at trial wanted you to believe it was. You take out item FL because of all the sliminess, not only in how it was found, how it was collected, but the testing, how it was tested, the test results itself. You take out, let's go through it. All right, so we got item FL, the 22 Marlin. That is a gun that the grooves and lands on that are not near as
Defined.
Nor conclusive per gun. It's a mass produced
Well, there was one of those in the Desi household too. They were very, very common.
They're very common. You buy them at Walmart for like $100. Any kid who lives in the country who hunts has owned one, probably, because it's such a mass produced common gun. And rifles and handguns are two different.
Oh yeah.
Especially 22 rifles.
Oh yeah.
So it does not prove anything conclusively. Then you have the owner of the gun saying, that was my gun. I fired it all over the place.
3,000, at least 3,000 rounds.
Yep. Because he lived there for years and shot at any kind of moving thing. My nephew has a 22 and shoots at squirrels because the squirrels get into everything here.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his brothers and his my brother-in-law, his stepdad, they shoot that thing, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week. And then plus target practicing on top of it.
Well, another question came up about that gun. Why were there bullet casings inside the garage? And Roland told them he shot all the time. They shot at gophers, they shot at whatever, sitting inside the garage. Now that's
Well, and
a lot of people.
The other thing is if you live in the country and you mow your grass, you know that the shells are projectiles from the lawnmower.
You don't pick them up.
Yeah, that you can take them out. You can take out a window. It can fly and hit you and do some damage.
Absolutely, it can.
And so you're going to, if you see them, you're going to pick them up. Plus, they're scrap. And they scrap parts.
Sure.
So, which is a side hustle, a legal side hustle.
Absolutely.
You can turn them back in. My brother-in-law cleans copper, and I've seen them take in a trailer full of scrap metal and get $900.
Oh, I watch a guy on YouTube. He's got a channel. It's called Project FL. He lives in Florida.
Uh-huh.
And he's got his main source of income, or one of his main ones, is copper. And he's called the Copper King, and there's a reason for that. He's quite the character.
Oh yeah. Well, I just got some copper and the copper is where the money's at, by the way, for sure. I just got some copper from my brother-in-law because I want to make a bracelet because copper is very healing, and he acted like I was taking his pinky for an 18-inch piece of copper.
Well, it's $3.53. The price fluctuates. It's like all metal, but it's $3. I'm going to say at least $3.50 a pound.
Cleaned.
You can clean. Yeah.
Yep. And that's why people. There was a run down here. I don't know if it was everywhere. Abandoned homes where people were stealing the wiring,
Sure.
Out of these houses, and then they burn the coating off, clean it up, and take it to the thing.
You can strip it too. There's a way to strip it.
Mm-hmm.
the Copper King, this guy I watch, I'll send you his link. He's got a
Okay.
machine. He's got a machine that he can feed, and even different size of wire that will actually strip the insulation off of it, and you're just left with the wire, the
Yeah.
copper.
Yep. Well, and then speaking of copper, there's like if the current president news thing is to be believed, they're actually wanting to get away from importing it and instead getting it from sources within our country. So they're wanting to tariff copper imports, which is probably going to push the prices up even more at the
Well, yeah.
scrap yards.
I mean, there's a lot of large copper mines in the States, but I know they do bring a lot of it in as well.
Yeah.
But
All right, so let's go back to the so-called what they call it, the mountain of evidence. So then you have the blood in the RAV when you really target each blood that was allegedly tested and shown to be Stevens, when you analyze the placement of it and how it dried, I guess how it flowed and dried, it defies any logical sense of being placed there during a commission of a crime or during an active bleeding scenario. It looks more applied than dripping from an actively bleeding wound. So, and that's not just me saying that. That is blood expert analysis. That was in the original post-conviction filing as well. So that takes care of the blood in the RAV. Item FL. We did the gun. Then you have Teresa Halbach's non-blood DNA on item FL. So if it's not blood on the bullet fragment, what did she do? Spit on it?
well, she had Teresa's DNA in her cupboard. She admitted to that. She didn't, when she was done with it, she didn't take it and put it back in the proper evidence locker that's away from a workstation. She
Right.
had it in the lab, and
Right.
she. Go
But
ahead.
that's not evidence of Stephen Avery committing a crime against Teresa Halbach. So I'm arguing it from if the DNA on item FL is Teresa Halbach's and it's not blood and it was deposited during a commission of a crime committed by Stephen against Teresa, and it's not blood, what did she do? Spit on it?
Well, I mean, she said it was, if I remember, Doc can correct me if I'm wrong. She said it was nucleated cells is all she knew, and that's such a cop out because
Mhm.
she says it's not blood, so it had. What did it do? Did the bullet just roll on her and pick up some kind of cellular material? How's that work?
Yeah.
And the implication throughout the trial is that item FL and item FK is what caused the two bullet holes in the skull fragments they drug in there as well. They didn't necessarily outright say that, but that was the implication.
Right. And we also have Jensen, I believe, saying
Yep.
that there are that item FL, no, not item FL, but that she was shot in the head.
That's right.
Yes.
He did say it.
Yeah, he said that. They
Kind of screwed.
claim he didn't say it,
But he did.
but he did. And so that's another lie the state's caught in. Then we have the fact that they searched the garage how many times before they found it?
I think they were in there. I think they were in there at least 4 times, and of course they did a pretty extensive search on 2 of those days in early November,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they collected the bullet casings at that time as well, and then that was it. Nothing else to see here. Then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, after they coerced Brendan from here to hell and back, and that's another point. They got
Mm-hmm.
evidence gleaned from Brendan because he was, no matter what they say, he was a co-defendant, and then
Mm-hmm.
they separate Brendan out of out of Avery's trial a week before, but they still use the evidence collected against Avery.
So 5 months later, they get a quote confession unquote that is highly disputed.
Yeah.
That's fair, right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah. Since he screwed up the test, to me it was a disaster. It's just a complete disaster.
and so
And
go ahead.
it's called okay and was allowed to be introduced at trial. To me,
So
it's just complete. It's just it just
oh,
completely screws what I feel is seeking the truth. It's not. It's telling a story. It's theater.
it's selling a story to secure a conviction to
That's
stop
right.
a lawsuit that would have
That's right.
exposed mass level of corruption
That's
on
right.
many levels in the Wisconsin Department of Justice, from
Well,
the county to the state level, all the way from starting in Manitowoc, all the way up to Madison.
certainly real significant problems, even if we don't even consider going all the way up to the AG level, but certainly significant issues within the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. What that was going on in '85 in that time frame.
Yeah, well then, so we won't mention the DNA match to Gregory Allen with another sexual assault in Minnesota. We'll just kind of pretend, wink, wink, that we don't know that, because no one knew about that until quite some time later. All right, so let's continue. So we have the bullet fragments. We have the blood spatter. Oh, so we have the fact that there is not one piece of DNA, nor is there a fingerprint of Brendan or Teresa in Stephen's home or garage.
Correct. Or the RAV. Or the RAV.
Yeah, or the RAV. Or the RAV. Well, no, we have Teresa's DNA in the RAV. We don't have Teresa's fingerprints, nor do we have Brendan's DNA or fingerprints in the RAV.
That's right.
We have the fact that there's not one piece of Brendan's DNA or his fingerprints anywhere in this case whatsoever.
Correct.
We have the fact that Brendan wasn't even considered a possibility of being a suspect because Ken Kratz said that he wasn't there until
they needed him to be there.
Until they needed a co-defendant. That's right. And they couldn't use, I think Bobby was going to be the co-defendant, but they needed Bobby as an eyewitness. So Bobby was an eyewitness and Brendan was the co-defendant because Bobby supplied the proof that Teresa never left the property. Brendan supplied the narrative and evidence they needed a narrative of a crime in order to support that what they were going to use to sell it. Right. They knew how they were going to present this case and they needed someone to help them do that. And that was Brendan. Brendan was the supporting actor. And then Bobby was the eyewitness to the abduction. They had to do the abduction prior to Brendan getting home from school, because of the timing of the Auto Trader appointment. They couldn't change that. It could not, because of her cell phone records. So she could not have, it hindsight being 2020, if they could have had that phone call at 4 when he was trying to get her to come back, take a picture of whatever it was.
The end loader.
Yeah, the end loader. If that call would have connected, they could have had Brendan be the eyewitness to the abduction. Or, you see what I'm saying? But they had to have
Certainly.
her never leaving the property. And Brendan was in school. And so Brendan couldn't supply that. So they couldn't use Bobby as a co-defendant because he had to be the eyewitness that she never left. They needed Brendan to supply the narrative of the crime. Yep, the story.
The theater.
The theater. And he also was the route to get back onto the property to shore up the evidence to secure the conviction.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt about it.
So, what else am I missing?
Well, you've got
the license plates. That's what else Brendan did. And the laughable hood latch DNA, which that hood latch DNA is not blood.
No, it's touch DNA that survived, basically 5 months out in the open air.
Hood latch. Yeah, it's not blood, and it's and it wasn't, and there's protocol that in the state of Wisconsin, when a vehicle is towed by law enforcement, they unhook the batteries. So law enforcement had they want to say that Stephen unhooked the battery so the fob wouldn't work, but yet the battery being unhooked was something law enforcement did prior to having it towed. Well, I shouldn't say law enforcement. It was something law enforcement required the tow company to do. So, very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit many of the high points. There was another discussion on X the other day talking about these, I call them borderline pieces of evidence, partial profile, A23, partial profile, the license plate. I could have swore there's another.
Profile. I'm glad you brought up the license plate again, because the license plate has DNA on it that doesn't belong to Stephen or Brendan.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
I think there's one more piece that. It's folded up.
And it's folded up, which Stephen and them had no reason to fold it. Not folded in 3 to put in your back pocket.
Correct.
They could have folded it in half and shoved it under their seat if they were trying to hide it. Someone folds it in 3 to put it in a pocket to get it onto the scene and then sneak it in.
Well, that plate, because of the type of metal that it is, it doesn't take that much to destroy it. Any good hot barrel fire probably would have. And certainly if, they had this whopping 1,500 degree fire in that fire pit, it would have certainly burned up in that to cinders. It would have been destroyed.
Yeah, and if Stephen was truly trying to hide it, he would have put it into the fire, burned it into a ball, and then put it in the scrap pile to scrap. He wouldn't have just stuck it in a car.
Well, I agree. And, they would have had to have a screwdriver or a wrench to take that plate off, and there's no mention of that either.
Oh, yeah, good point.
There's no mention of that. There's just so many things.
Every piece of, quote, slam dunk evidence, unquote, against Stephen
isn't a slam dunk.
No, it's not. Every piece. And when every piece has problems, that's when you got to question the authenticity of the entirety of the case. It's one thing to have one or two that has issue. Okay. Every investigation, I don't expect it to be a slam,
it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, right?
Exactly. I understand that there are going to be, we're all human. I understand that there's going to be problems with one or two things. I am completely okay with that. But every single thing or person in this case is problematic. Every single one. And when you're not honest about that, when you don't acknowledge that, when presented with all the problems and the proof of the problems, when you can't acknowledge that, then you're not being honest about the investigation. And if you're not going to be honest about the quality of the investigation and the motive law enforcement had to frame him, then you're not being honest about why you believe in guilt or innocence, right?
That's where the dividing line is. If you start omitting these clear events, you're just saying, "Oh well, it didn't happen. Oh, it didn't matter. Come on, guys, mistakes happen."
Yeah, Dr. Silkman, that is such a great point. Such a great point, and it cannot be repeated enough. If you're having a great big whopping fire to destroy the evidence, why would you? Yep.
You're going to burn a body up.
Why would you burn additional evidence in a separate location on the same day? That is such a great point. That makes absolutely zero sense. Oh, here's another one too. Let's not forget that the only location where there was proof of some sort of bloody event occurring when law enforcement investigated ASY was in the Dassey garage. Okay, I'm not saying that's where Teresa was killed, but there was a bloody mess and a deer head hanging there, a couple of days old at least, and no one bothered to really document it, test, and confirm that all that blood was indeed animal only. It was basically just minimized and dismissed.
Well, it should have been cleared. When you have that kind of scene, you clear it and make sure that everything's on the up and up, and that way there's no question. And it wasn't done. Devin has got a really good question, and I'll briefly try to answer it. Doc has answered it partially here. How was law enforcement able to keep Cuss Road out of the media? Wasn't there radio transmission back then? Yes, and there is some connection to a few radio transmissions to Cuss Road. I mean, there's, I don't know, handful or two. There's not many, but there definitely was transmissions talking about Cuss Road and a few things requesting Colburn and Link back over there. I can't remember all of them, but there are a few. They picked up a couple of young kids that were 30 or 40 miles from where they went to school walking over there. Those guys got picked up and took in. So there are some references. We have no news footage. I don't know exactly how they kept that um, away from the media because they monitor. But Doc answered it pretty well, and he said the use of cell phones, in which we know that there were, oh my God, there's so many times that we hear
Copy
on the
on
radio.
code.
Well, they'll say on the radio, they'll say, "Hey, give me a 1021," which means call my freaking cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
That happened. I don't know how many times. I'm going to say well over 100, but
Mm-hmm.
that number could be low. It could be more than that. It was a lot. So and I don't necessarily begrudge police using their cell phones, but if it's case related, where do you divide the line and say, well, I want to spitball this. I've heard this, and it not being an evidentiary type call, but then you get into something that is, and that still goes on a cell phone. How's that fair to the defendant? I get that cops have to work in private sometimes. I get it, and I'm fine with it. But where's that dividing line? So anyway, I'm not gonna. We could beat that one to
And
death.
there was a wee bit of media coverage on the activity, if I recall correctly, on Coast Road. The biggest thing is that the quarry behind the Avery property, where a lot of evidence was found, it's actually where the medical examiner Kleiser went and signed Teresa's death certificate after visiting. That was owned by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. It was owned, maintained, and controlled by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department.
Oh, you're talking about Mickles Materials. No, that wasn't the county's property. That's Mickles Materials.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the Manitowoc County gravel pit, which is right behind Avery's property. There's three.
Which direction are you talking about?
Don't ask me that question because I've never visited there. And until I actually walk it, I'm not going to be able to orient myself to north, south, east, west.
I'm trying to remember because the Redont pit quarry was west.
So you have Redonts, and then you have Nichols, and then you have the Manitowoc County gravel pit.
Correct. I get you.
Okay. The Manitowoc County gravel pit allowed Manitowoc County access all the way around because the Manitowoc County gravel pit backs up to the Avery property, correct?
Well, I was thinking that it was southwest of Redont's pit and didn't border the Avery property.
We need to really investigate that because
I don't remember.
Sure
we have I know we have a map that shows the legend of that, but I can't remember. Yeah. I know Mickles Materials is to the, if you're looking at the map and you got north, south, east, and west, and north is up top. Mickles Materials was to the right, east, and a little south, or it was east of Davis Salvage Yard. Redont's quarry was west. And I had it in my mind that the Manitowoc County gravel pit was a little bit southwest of Redont, so it'd be a little further away, but I could be wrong, Christina.
And then Siebert, when Siebert saw the Jeep and the RAV going through, right?
On Jambo Creek Road.
Yeah, I always thought that what he saw was them going through the Manitowoc County gravel pit. And if you get into the Manitowoc County gravel, I need to really research this, because if you get into the Manitowoc County gravel pit, then you have access to all these other locations through property controlled by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. So then if you also get a search warrant for Stevens for ASY, that 40 acres, plus the gravel pit Manitowoc County owns, then you have basically gotten a lock. Oh, and then you have property of what's dude's name that who put a statement on paper with Zellner?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
The guy who owns one of the pits where the trailers were.
Oh, that was Redon.
Redon. Okay, so they got control of his pit. Then they had control of their pit. Then they had control of the Avery property. And if you
and Nichols Materials, they were over there for a couple of
material. So if you look at the size of the area that Manitowoc County put in DOJ and Calumet, if you look at the size of that, what they put on lock, so they controlled who went in and who went out. They basically had a perimeter set up which allowed them to move in secret. So even if media was on quote scene, they were behind the barricade of all of that area. And that's a massive, it's huge. If you really start looking at the scale of what they put a lock around, you know, yes, media was on the scene, but they were able to creepy crawly around a size, I mean, acres, probably, I would say 150 acres, easy, between the quarries and Avery's. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I'm going to bet you it was more like 500 acres.
Yeah, and that's huge.
Huge area. Yeah, oh, yeah. Huge area.
Huge.
And don't forget about, you know, we don't have any real answers. Don't forget about the blocking off of, what's the name of that damn road?
Q?
No, not Q. North of the property. Xander Road.
Oh, Xander Road. Yeah, that too.
They wanted it blocked off on this point and then east or west of that point. What were they doing? Because we have no report. The Manitowoc didn't report what they were doing at all. Just block it. So what the hell were they doing? You know, another question. Anyway, great conversation. Yeah, Doc, I tend to agree. Cuss Road was used as some kind of something. I don't know what, but I can't let go of what, not only that Fallon wrote, but these other incidents as well that I just can't see it as being a mistake. I can't. Anyway, Christina, we got 2 questions. Let's get them done and get out of here because I'm getting hungry and I need to eat.
Okay.
We've been on a couple hours yapping. So anyway, this first one's from Kansas. I think he had to leave. For later, am I right in thinking Brendan Dassey's some of it answer to Barb came very soon after his coerced confession? Have to go, but we'll catch up in a few hours. Well, what that came from, Kansas, is when Barb and Brendan were talking, there were a number of questions that Barb was asking Rolling, and at some point she said, "Did you do it?" or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact words. And then she asked another question too, and by that time, you know, Brendan doesn't answer things necessarily immediately. He's a little slow to respond, which is fine. And he said some of it. Well, okay. There were a lot of events that went on, but to me, it never meant that he helped kill or have anything to do with Teresa. It was he helped Stephen do some of the things that they did that evening. That's what I took out of it.
Yeah.
There was just simply,
some of it could mean so many different things.
Sure.
It doesn't have to mean I help participate in a crime.
That's right. Because
and
they did multiple things. They cleaned the garage floor. They went around the yard and picked up brush and got that van seat, maybe a few tires, whatever, and they had a bonfire. I don't even
yep,
say a bonfire; they had a fire. I
yep,
think that happened. I think that happened on the evening of the 30th because we know Brendan was at Stevens' garage on the evening of October 30th. He's on the phone with Jody. We can hear him in the background.
mm-hmm,
And Jody says almost immediately when that call picks up who you're talking to, Steven says Brendan.
mm-hmm.
I think they had a fire that afternoon after they got back from Crivets, burnt a bunch of shit up. I think on the afternoon of the 30th, 31st, Stephen finished burning that up. Brendan was over for an hour or so and went back home, was home by 8 o'clock. Blaine comes home, is at home by 8:30. And that whole thing has been completely twisted to fit the
Mm-hmm.
story. More theater. Anyway, we got one more question here. I hope that answers your question, Candace.
Yep.
From Devin, why can't Kathleen Zellner go after the Crown Lab to get a new trial? Isn't that case open to retrial? There are a lot of evidence of a crime. Am I wrong? Well, it's all rolled into one. Devin is, separating out the Crime Lab. You can't really do that. And a lot of things are procedurally barred. So at this point, because of this technicality, and it is a technicality, it didn't have to be necessarily followed. The procedurally barred doesn't take away from what Kathleen's experts revealed in 2018 or 2017 when she filed her post-conviction motion for relief. It's going to take a new trial, basically, to get a lot of the stuff introduced properly into trial. So I just don't think she can legally separate that out. That's my opinion.
The
I think
biggest thing for me that I learned when I started doing wrongful conviction is that in the post conviction world, you are bound by what has been entered into the trial record. So you have to use what was done at trial in order to reopen the case, unless there is undeniable proof of wrongdoing. Right? Do you agree with that, Jax?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so right now she has to stick with the story presented at trial in the record. That's a big deal.
That's considered the truth.
That's right. And it doesn't matter how obvious it is that it's not, because
Right.
a jury found them guilty.
Yep.
That is what she has to work with
That's right.
until the judges in the post conviction overturn it. Once the verdict is overturned, then the file is reopened, which allows the ability to insert new evidence into the record. And
Basically to correct it. That's right.
Yep. And that was something that I really didn't grasp until I started researching this case.
And the issue and another issue along with what you said is that the state is stuck with what they presented. They're stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I want to add real quick back to like our little acreage thing. If by controlling the Avery property and the 3 quarries, if that is 500 acres, that is 60 miles.
I think Doc did a computation of some kind several weeks ago. I can't remember what he said he'd come up with. Isn't that right, Doc? Can you remember? I know it was hundreds of acres. I know it was.
Yeah. So
I don't-
imagine having a perimeter around 60 miles and being able to do whatever you want without anyone watching you. Now, they couldn't get away with it today because of drones. You know, drones are so hard to detect. And you know, people are real quick to spot sliminess by law enforcement and launch a drone, and drones are pretty inexpensive to get drones with the ability to, you know, navigate that. But back then it was, you know, that was once again new technology, and not everyone had access to it.
Oh, they were pretty rare in 2005. It was actually very rare. Hey, Doc and Christina, everybody here. George has asked, who is Bushman? Should I play the radio transmission?
Yes.
Doc, what do you think? I'm with Christina. What do you think, Doc? And so we can kind of explain who Bushman is. I can preface this with Bushman searchers to search for whatever, and they went to different areas around Avery Salvage Yard, etc. Bushman is a reserve deputy. He was pretty old at that point. You know, he didn't really, you know, a reserve deputy helps with parking and just minor functions as needed. They're not necessarily a scheduled officer. Sometimes they are, but anyway, Bushman was a reserve deputy, and he led Team A. Team A started in the Redont pit, and I think there was 6 of them, if I remember, something like that, 7, I don't know. Anyway, they start in Redont's pit with permission, spread out, you know, I don't know how far apart, 20 feet or whatever, and they begin to walk towards Cuss Road. At some point, they cross from the Redont pit property over to these personal property that own this stretch of wooded area, and they continued to walk, and they found this area of disturbed earth. It was clearly disturbed. So Bushman, they found some stuff too. It's not explained what he found either. Anyway, Bushman all teams had were provided with at least one radio. So Bushman calls in on the radio. I'm going to play that call for you. Give me just 1 second here to find it, because it's going to take me just a second. I have to dig for a little bit. I don't have this in the key calls. I should put that in a key call. Okay. 2022 radio channel. Yeah, this is it. And then this was November 7. There were quite a few calls that we didn't have prior to this. 7, is this it? Let me check this out. It won't play for you all, but it'll play for me. But please forgive my silence. Yeah, I got it here. Okay, let me pop this on screen.
And Bushman had a brother that also was part of the 85 kid. Right? There's 2 Bushmans, if I remember correctly, correct? Mike and... because one of them was married to one of the ladies from the DA's office. There's 2 Bushmans. Larry and... why am I thinking Michael?
Well, Mike Bushman's the one that was on Team A.
Yeah.
He was the reserve deputy. I don't know anything about the brother.
Yeah, there's 2 Bushmans. Hold on. I'll have to look it up while you find the call.
I got the call. I'm fixing to play it. So, George, this this radio transmission is Bushman, and you can see the time there. It's 10:33 through 10:40. It's a very short, and it's not just Bushman. There's different people on the radio, but you'll hear it. I'll point it out when it comes up. It's just right after the call starts playing. So let me play it for you here. You're going to hear Bushman call for investigators, and then he's going to say, "You better bring some shovels," something of that nature. Anyway, let's play this.
752 to 496. Brad, we're almost at the end of Quick Road. Should be a squad down there. I don't know who's sitting in it, but bring an investigator down here. We got some items that should be cleared. Got it.
We got some items that should be cleared. They're at the end of Cuss Road. Continuing on.
You may want a shovel.
There you go. So they immediately went to Cuss Road. They moved resources there quite quickly. They blocked off access to the area to traffic. They wouldn't let anyone in there. They put up I don't know how much crime scene tape around the entire, going all the way around the wooded area. We have photographs of that. Thank God the State Patrol got McConnell. He's a State Patrol helicopter pilot. He got in the air. He took 155 pictures of the AV Salvage Yard and the Cuss Road area of some of what was going on. Now, if you're looking for any police reports about it, there's very little information about it. Very, very little. As far as I know, there's not one DCI report about it. Nothing. Nothing at all. And that's a real problem. It's omission of a major event in the case. They took people off of the AV Salvage Yard to Cuss Road. There's at least 20 officers in one of the photographs. There are probably more than that we can't see because some of it's wooded. But again, we don't have any, there's some, but it's very little reporting on Cuss Road at all.
There may not be two Bushmans. I may be thinking of the Herman brothers, but I'm almost positive.
Oh, there's definitely two. There's definitely two Herman brothers.
Yeah, but I thought there was two Bushmans too. I'm gonna have to do some digging. I could be misremembering. There's so much data in this case.
Oh my God, yeah, it's extremely complicated. But as you noticed in Josh Kaul and Lisa Kumper's letter to the Supreme Court, they left out so much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Anyway,
mm-hmm.
I want to scoot us on out of here. We're past 2.5 hours and I'm hungry.
I'm so happy we had this open mic. I tried to, I had it worked out to jump on last week, but I saw that, it got rescheduled. So I'm glad I was able to make it this week. I enjoyed this.
I'm going to, I've moved a lot of my, I'm beginning to move myself away from X over to Blue Sky. I'm going to post my profile in the chat if anybody wants to follow. Blue Sky is much less vitriolic. X has become so bad. It's really difficult to have any kind of social media conversation.
I haven't heard of Blue Sky. Talk to me.
It's very similar to X in many ways, but it's, like I said, it's less vitriolic. There's so much just crazy stuff that's going on X. It affects everything. I'm not going to say anything about anything political, but of course I'm going to say a little bit. It's a huge driver of what's going on X, a huge driver. And to me, it can't be just about what's going on in politics if it's a true social media platform. It just can't, because there's other issues going on in the world besides this one thing. Blue Sky is far less about that. It's more about other things too. And it's I haven't seen anyone from the upper management or whatever making a lot of posts, and that's helpful. It lets people just talk. So that's why um, I'm beginning to pull completely away from X over to Blue Sky. I don't know I haven't really read their TOS and what's allowed and what's not allowed. There's not been. Well, I just haven't looked, but it's much easier to get through. There's, of course, far fewer people, but at the same time,
It'll grow. If it's
well,
any good, it'll grow.
Oh, it's definitely growing, but it's.
There's also a new alternative to TikTok that I have joined. I was looking to see if I could find it, to see if y'all had heard of it yet.
Yeah, Danny, there's just been a lot of things going on, in real life for me, for Doc, for other people. It's been difficult the last several weeks. Both Doc and I have had health issues, and then of course with my wife, she had a pretty serious fall, and she's still recovering. She's made huge progress, but she's still got a ways to go. There's just been a lot of things, beyond our real control. So it's interfered with our ability to live stream and, have a conversation about any part of the case that people want to discuss. And I don't know how much people want to hear. It's something that I haven't asked, our normal group of people that come and listen and want to talk about various issues of the case. There's so much, you can take, like Christina did a few minutes ago, you can take these different sections and talk about them to keep them alive, keep them fresh in your mind. We did a huge thing on the open mic, going through the Manitowoc County calls and the radio transmissions, and everybody seemed to really like that. Jody's calls, we went through that, because no matter how you divide this up, this is another conversation that came up on X. They applied so much pressure on Jody in 2005, 2006, almost for a year. They were on her back, and she never would turn on Avery. She never did. Then in 2016, along comes Nasty Disgrace, and I'll say it was a paid interview. Can I prove that? No, but all of a sudden, Jody knows all this information. How's that possible? She was in jail, locked up. She wasn't even on the property. So, to me, it's just blatantly, she was paid to say what she did. That's my opinion. I can't prove it.
And she also had multiple DUIs that she hadn't been prosecuted on. And she was looking at some serious prison time as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So they had her stuck between a rock and a hard place.
That's a good point, Doc. I'm going to post a link to our Discord for anybody. There has been a lot of great discussion in our Discord. Absolutely. Let me post a link for anybody that's not in that may want to pop in and join. As long as people are civil, it doesn't matter if you think they're guilty. As long as you're civil, Raven has been extremely civil. Mm-hmm. He's a guilter, and I don't have a problem with that. No one does. It's good to debate these things with people that think different than you do. You never know where it's going to go.
Yeah. I'm always open to civil discourse.
Absolutely.
Because it allows us to understand the mindset of others. And you're not going to learn sticking with an echo chamber.
No, you can't.
Mm-mm.
It's impossible. So anyway, my plan is tomorrow night, I'm going to go ahead and schedule it just to reread Judge Angie's order and decision. Her last one before she, another thing that people forget, Judge Angie handled Avery's case for over a decade, and then all of a sudden, after her order and decision, she drops the case. I don't understand. I just don't understand why she would do that. I mean, her order and decision is completely contrary in so many ways, just like the Court of Appeals. I don't agree with it at all. So anyway, that's the plan for tomorrow night.
Yay. What time?
7 o'clock, same time.
Okay.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yay.
So anyway, I'm going to scoot us out of here. I'm even hungrier than I was a minute ago when I said that. I want to thank everybody that's been. It wouldn't, for some reason, Facebook, because this had been scheduled for a couple of weeks, Facebook wouldn't allow, so this didn't get live streamed to Facebook, but it is on Twitter. We've had several from Twitter listening, or X, I should say, and several from YouTube. So we appreciate it. All of us do.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be more back on track as more time goes on. I'm not sure when Doc is going to come back on air. He's got things he's having to deal with. So, but he'll be back as soon as he's up to it. There's, for what Doc's doing, it's extremely difficult because he's trying to include as many references as he can. So it's not just like reading one document. Those times he's probably having to go through a dozen documents to get one part or something.
Doc is a professional researcher, and it shows in his level of work, and we are very blessed to have him as part of this case.
Agreed.
And the more that I work on trying to relaunch my the CTE podcast or present anything, the more I value Doc's input, because I see, he sets the bar high just by being part of this team. And so he really encourages me not to put out something that I know is not my best effort. And and we are very grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard, man, because you can't let yourself get distracted too far off what you're researching, or you're going to.
Right.
Unless you write it down immediately, you're going to lose your train of thought of where you're going.
Yeah.
And then he clips it, and then sometimes he adds captions to it, so that takes even more time. So there's a lot of steps that he has to take to prepare these slides that we showed during the reading with the crew. So hats off to you, Doc. Not trying to blow your ego, your head up too big, but you don't know how much you appreciate it, man.
Yes, that's exactly right. Very grateful.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're all kind of blessed to have people that are willing to listen to any civil discussion with anyone. Civil discussion. I don't want to be part of any drama. I just don't. I want new information just like everyone else. I'm trying to get it. I'm still waiting. Their tactic now is we're not going to deny your request, but we're just not going to. We just won't answer you. We'll just let your request sit in the pile over there. So legally, I guess they can get away with it because there's no consequences for these people. Anyway, I'm not going to get off on that. Let's get out of here. Again, chicks are in the mail. No way, Doc. Anyway, thanks again, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow night with the reading of Judge Angie, her order and decision, and see what discussions those parts spark. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Christina, for helping. And this has been a Foul Play production.